Hi, my name is Chuck Fresh. I'm the PCGYN, and this is Computer Care Clinic's Tip of the Day.
A lot of people ask me, where do you get these voices from? Well, I'm a professional voiceover person. You probably heard me in the movies or on TV, and I do a number of voices, some of which you may hear in these videos. So don't be alarmed. It's still me, but I'm just doing all kinds of different strange things. Anyway, today we're going to talk about, on the Computer Care Clinic channel, we're going to talk about something that's very, very, actually critically important. We're going to talk about backing up your PC. How to make sure that your pictures, your important documents, your music, and other important stuff that you don't want to lose, your irreplaceable stuff, the pictures that you've taken of your family or friends, childhood pictures, pictures of infants and small children, pictures of people who are no longer with us. You want to keep those pictures forever because a lot of them are obviously important to you. And what many people don't realize is there's no permanent form of storage. There's nothing that is fail-safe. So what you want to do is ensure that you have backups. You have more than one copy of everything that's important to you before it's too late, because all storage devices fail. All hard drives fail. And it's important that you have everything backed up before that happens to you. It's just a matter of time. All hard drives are going to lose their ability to save stuff, so you want to make sure you've got it somewhere else. So we'll talk about that. A lot of people think about, well, they don't start backing up until they've run into their first catastrophe where they've lost a hard drive, or someone had stole their computer, or it has a mechanical or electronic failure, or power surge, lightning strike, or something. Or if some teenager decides to clear out your hard drive because they need some room for those goofy games they're playing, or videos or whatnot. So what you want to do is make sure that you think about backing up before something terrible happens to your personal, valuable information. Now, again, as we discussed, all hard drives fail, whether they're moving parts or the traditional serial ATA or SATA hard drives, IDE hard drives, or even solid states. All electronic devices are prone to failure. There's no perfect storage medium that exists yet. Maybe something's down the road. We haven't heard about it yet. Solid state is hopefully going to be more reliable than the moving parts of the traditional hard drives with the spinning disks, but we don't know yet because they haven't been around long enough to tell. So these charts from a company called Backblaze that does a lot of storage, and they did a study of the failure rate of their hard drives. Now, just because Seagate appears to have a higher failure rate doesn't mean that goes across all their drives. There's a lot of data in between here, so don't read that incorrectly. They're using really inexpensive Seagate drives, like desktop drives, when they should be using server drives, which is more along the lines of what Hitachi puts out. But Hitachi drives cost a little bit more. They're made a little bit better, hence their lower failure rate. So our advice is, when we do computer repairs in our store, we tend to go with Hitachi drives, although technically Hitachi is now owned by Western Digital or Seagate, one of those. I know there's mergers all the time. I can't keep up with them all. So, well, we'll talk about that in another video. But just all hard drives fail. It's just a matter of when. We like to tell people that the average hard drive is going to last somewhere between 24 and 60 months. Now, there are outliers. I've seen hard drives last as long as 10 years, but that, again, is usually an exception and really depends on how you use it. If it's in a laptop, it's going to be banged around and moved more than a traditional desktop hard drive, which stays stationary. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but count on somewhere between 24 and 60 months on average. If you've been putting off your backup, if your drive's approaching 3 or 4 years old, you probably want to do it sooner than later. So now, what do you store on your hard drive? Well, you store your photos, your addresses, books, documents, taxes, wills, music, videos. People have spent thousands of dollars on iTunes collections. It's insane how much money you can spend on these things. And then once you lose them, you may lose them forever. So if you're not prepared to lose all that information, if you don't want to lose those digital photos that you've taken hours to scan, or you've paid somebody a lot of money to transfer old 8mm or VHS videos to a hard drive, you want to make sure you don't lose those, and you ensure that you won't lose them by backing them up to another place. So fortunately, backing up is actually easier than you think, and it's easier than ever, and it's getting easier all the time. Especially with these Carbonite services and Mozy and Dropbox, iCloud, all these services now automate to a certain extent your backups, your backup processes. A lot of these things, well, actually everything on this page will upload to the cloud. And the cloud, to explain it for those of you who don't understand, is essentially someone else's computer that's located in another location somewhere. They're usually, it's oversimplifying it, obviously. These are big servers filled with thousands of hard drives and thousands of computers. And what they do is they remain in business and they get paid to store massive amounts of information on your behalf. Most of them are redundant, meaning they have multiple locations. So if a hard drive fails in one place, they can just flip a switch and it goes, actually it just flips automatically. It goes to another location and your data is secure somewhere else. So you pay these people a little bit of money to do that. There are some free services available. Most of them are paid. Most of them are reliable. And feature pack services are paid, such as Carbonite. But they're very reasonable. Carbonite's as little as $60 a year, and they'll store virtually unlimited amounts of your data. So we use that here in our store. So what is a backup? Well, let's step back a second, because a lot of people get these terms confused in terms of memory. You have two different types of memory in most computers. You have a short-term memory, which is your RAM, or your random access memory. Those are long, thick sticks, long, thin sticks, actually, that stick inside the motherboard of your computer. And what they're used to do is store information temporarily. They're erased every time you detach your computer from power. What they will do is store information occasionally that needs to be put on the long-term storage, which is your hard disk or your hard disk drive or your hard drive. Those terms are used interchangeably. And what that is, it's a moving platter, a couple of inches big, about less than an inch thick, that stores your information on a disk. It's either usually aluminum or glass, and it's coated with some kind of magnetic substrate. And a little head bounces around. Well, it doesn't bounce around. It kind of glides over just above it and writes information in bits and bytes with magnetic data. And they're very, very well. It's amazing how well they work and how long they work, considering the speeds and the logistics to go into these devices. So your hard drive stores everything on your computer. It stores your operating system, your programs, your personal data, and it stores this on what's called a permanent basis. So when you take away power to the computer, your information's still there. The next time you plug it in and turn it on, everything's still there. So we call that permanent storage, as opposed to the short-term or RAM storage. And your pictures, your documents, your songs, videos, addresses, email folders, blah, 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 it's all going to be stored on your permanent storage on your hard drive, hard disk drive. Now, what is a backup? Well, a backup, and this is important, this is the key, and this is what a lot of people don't understand. A backup is a copy of that data that is physically separate from the original. Meaning you have to plug something into your computer or connect to a device on someone else's computer on the internet somewhere, and then make a copy of your personal information somewhere else. So it's completely independent of your computer. And that qualifies as a backup. So you have two copies of anything at one point, and then you have a successful backup. And you can copy everything. You can copy one or two things. It doesn't matter, as long as you copy the stuff that's important to you to a physically separate device. So a couple of examples here. This is a picture of an internal hard drive, of a desktop hard drive made by Western Digital. And a backup, as defined, is a copy of one or more files on that hard drive that are put to a flash drive or a cloud service or even a photo album. Yes, a photo album or a printed document is technically a backup of something that you have on your computer. So what is not a backup? This is important also. A lot of people misunderstand the terminology, and I'm going to try to make this clear to you. So many people, especially in the earlier days of backup software, will back up to a partition on their hard drive. So why is that not considered a backup? Because it's not physically separate. So many hard drives are partitioned, meaning there's a logical separation in the hard drive, although it's still the physical same hard drive, but they're partitioned into separate areas. So if your hard drive fails, chances are you're going to lose everything on all the partitions on the hard drive, therefore it's not technically a backup. So you want to get it off that main hard drive, and as you're seeing here on this image, you have, this is my computer. Actually, I have a Windows C drive and a recovery drive, a D drive, which I never use. I always wipe that and use that for some kind of storage. But I never back up anything to that because technically it's the same drive. It is not physically separate. So you don't want to back up to your main hard drive because you don't essentially have a backup. Also, this is another important thing too. We have a lot of people who come in with an external hard drive, and something crashes, the external hard drive crashes, whatnot, and they're like, well, I backed everything up to my external hard drive, but then the external hard drive failed. Well, that's not a backup either. Instead, what you've done is moved your one copy, your original data, to a separate device. But when you move it, as in cutting and pasting, you're not leaving it on the original device. So what happens? You still only have one copy of that important data, and it is now stored on an external hard drive. And external hard drives are subject to the same failures as internal hard drives. Again, there's no perfect digital storage, or paper storage for that matter. So the important thing, again, don't think that moving things or storing things on an external hard drive is a backup. You still only have one copy. What you want to do is copy that information, leave it on your hard drive, and then copy it to an external device, whatever that is, the cloud, a flash drive, an external hard drive, a CD, DVD, whatever. Just copy it from one place to another to make sure that you have at least 2 copies of anything, and then you have a legitimate backup. A lot of people come to us and say, well, my computer's really slow. Is that because Kim Commando told me I have too much on my hard drive? No, it's completely a fallacy. I don't know if Kim Commando said that. However, it is completely false. You can store up to, I think the factor is about 90% capacity on your hard drive without it affecting the speed of your computer whatsoever. Very few people ever reach that with storage devices exceeding a terabyte of storage now. So that is a ridiculous rumor. You do need that extra 10% for virtual memory, for caching, for other things, but most people will never reach that. So don't worry about taking information off your C drive or your hard drive. Just leave it on there and just make sure you back it up to something else. So what should you back up, people ask us? Well, there's a couple of things you can do. You can image your entire hard disk. That means make a perfect copy, or a clone as we call it in the business. And that will clone your data from that point and your programs. So you can restore that image, which will put you right back where you were the day that you made that particular clone or that particular image. Now, the downside is that it takes a long time. It requires a lot of storage. You're going to need a really big hard drive now that you're storing all that stuff. And you're going to store a lot of junk that you really don't need. Temporary files, cookies, system restore points, Windows updates that you no longer need. So a faster and cheaper method here is to skip doing the image and simply back up your personal data, your pictures, your documents. And we'll show you where all that stuff lives on your C drive. Each user has their own subset of documents, favorites, music. So if you set up your computer with multiple users, if you have one login for your wife, one for your kids, one for your sister, your uncle, your enemies, each one of those users on your computer is going to have their own individual folders for their personal documents. You want to make sure that you back that stuff up too, unless you really don't like them. So moving on here, this is where the stuff lives on your hard drive. And most of the modern operating systems, Windows XP was a little bit different, but hardly anybody's using that anymore. We have an old backup video you can check if you're still using XP. But in Vista 7, 8, and 10, your personal data, for the most part, is stored in the C/users/whatever your name is folder. In this case, on my hard drive, it's Chuck. So it would be C, users, Chuck. My personal information, my documents, my desktop folder, my downloads, my pictures, my music, my iTunes, all that stuff's going to be stored in that folder in subfolders underneath the Chuck directory. In some cases, if you're using network-compatible programs, if you share QuickBooks on a computer, or you're using other things that other people need access to on your computer, they may be in all users or the public folder. So those are different things. So those are exceptions and not the rule. But if you're using those type of shared programs, you may want to look into backing those folders up also. So here's a user, a standard user named Egbert, and you can see underneath his subdirectory, underneath his name, these are all the folders that exist that typically store his information. So, and that's going to look like that again for all the users on your computer. And what you want to back up is most of these folders, or whatever is important to you under each one of the users. So what should you back up? Well, Depending on what you're using, you may want to back up the contacts folder. If you're not using it, don't worry about it. You can copy it anyway. It's just a tiny little folder. It's going to take a couple of kilobytes on your hard drive at most. Your desktop folder. A lot of people use the desktop folder for storage. They put pictures there or folders, which is totally okay. When you see somebody with a cluttered desktop with a bunch of folders or files on it, they're using that desktop folder, and you definitely want to back that up because there may be some important information there. The documents folder, the downloads folder, where you download your software, your licenses, or things that people send you in emails or on the web. Your favorites, which are your Internet Explorer favorites. It stores all those favorite places, all those little stars, those places you like to go when you use Internet Explorer in the favorites folder. Your music is where your iTunes folder lives, or anything else that you bought or downloaded legally or illegally on the internet is going to live in your music folder. And then pictures are where your picture is going to be, obviously, and you also have video folders. There's some other stuff there, save games and links and some other stuff that's really not important unless you're a power user or you know how to access that. Some people save their games on there, but that's becoming less and less important with the cloud taking over those responsibilities. Now, if you use Windows Live Mail or Outlook, those files and folders may be in a hidden directory, and you can search Google on how to do that, or you can go into the program itself and write a backup file somewhere where it's not hidden, so you'd be able to back that up more easily. And also, again, your favorites are going to be in your favorites folder. We've already talked about that. Now, Chrome or Firefox bookmarks are saved in a hidden directory, so you can also export that data or information. You can synchronize your data if you log into a Chrome account or a Google account or a Firefox account, and it will copy all that information over to another computer that's on the internet once you log in. And then there's tax forms, there's family tree files, medical records, and all kinds of other stuff that you probably want to back up too. So look into where that stuff is stored. Make sure you know where it is, and make sure that when you're backing things up, you include those files too. Now, there's a lot of stuff you really don't need to back up or you shouldn't back up, and that's including your Windows directory, your program files, unless you're doing an image. If you're doing a system image, and that's important to you because you have software that's either expensive to replace or somebody loaned it to you, or you can't find the original installation disks or keys, you may want to do that image more frequently. But typically, if you're just backing up your data, you don't need to, you can ignore the Windows folder, the program files, program data, and all kinds of other stuff. Now, you probably don't need to download and back up your software unless you've downloaded that online and you need to reinstall that. In most cases, you can log back into the place you bought it from, including Amazon, and just download it as many times as you want. Now, temporary files you really don't need. They should be replaced and cleaned, although it's not really harming anything by being there, and your system naturally uses temporary files and cookies and restore points and all that stuff, and anything in a recycle bin. When you do an image backup or a clone, it's going to back all this stuff up, but you really don't need to back all that stuff up. Now, let's talk about backup methods and the types of media that you want to back up to. Now, this apparently is somebody who had a hard time with backing up, and we're going to help him or her. I can't tell, but bro, sis, work on those eyebrows. So, average file sizes. It's important to know how much space you need for a backup. Now, this is going to affect the method or the media that you choose to back up your information. If you're just backing up documents and they don't have a lot of pictures or attachments or music files or something strange in them, you may only need a small flash drive, which can cost you as little as $10 at your local Walmart or office store. But if you need to back up everything, if you want to do an image, you may need several gigabytes. So this chart shows you how many megabytes are in a gigabyte and what's in a terabyte, just to give you a starting point, a jumping point to find out how much it is. Most of today's storage media is measured in gigabytes. Average file size is 1 character. Text is going to be 1 byte, and you can play around with this. An average Word document is about 50K. If it's a couple of pages long and it's got a bunch of text in it, because text does not take up a lot of information. Now, digital photos, you start to get a little heavier because it stores a lot of digital information. It's got, as you've seen in our digital photo video, if you haven't watched that yet, it stores all those individual pixels, color information, lighting information. There's a lot of information contained in a digital photograph, even a compressed one. So you start to get up to a 3 megabyte file. If you're doing raw files, you can get up to 30 to 50 to 100 megabytes, some kind of ridiculous amount. And as you move along, the Outlook mailbox is pretty heavy. Video takes a tremendous amount. Now we're talking about gigabytes of storage. So a 2-hour HD movie that you downloaded from iTunes could be about 4 gigabytes. And now we're getting into Ultra HD, and it's going to be even bigger until the compression gets a little tighter. So average on what we see in terms of backup, the average documents, pictures, music collection, this was about a year ago, is about 10 gigabytes. Now with people storing their iTunes collections, buying movies and stuff, it's incrementally increasing. We're getting up to 20, 30, 40 gigabytes, but still well under most of the hard drives that you can buy on the market today. I think the smallest one you can buy in an office store is 500 gigabytes. You've got plenty of storage, and they're very, very affordable too. And you can see how much the Library of Congress stores. And then every word ever spoken by humans is an exabyte, which I have no idea what that is. But let's talk about the mechanisms or the devices we use for backing up. If you came up back in the early days like I did, you may have used floppy disks and drives, and they are now technically obsolete. Although some people hang on to those old Windows 98 and XP computers, there's more than you think, and they still use these things, and they're still available commercially. You can't store a lot on them. They're really only good for documents and text files. If you store that type of information, you could probably still get away with this, but it stores a paltry amount of information, 1.44 megabytes, maybe 20, 30 text files, about all you can get on these things. So they're kind of obsolete and they're difficult to find. Recordable CDs and DVDs going the way of the dodo, soon to be obsolete, not even included in a lot of new laptop computers. So these are going away too. And you can still find these in most of your stores. Storage amounts are very, very small on this too, so you can't really back up an entire music collection. Although, as a side note, I used to be a nightclub DJ, and I could store every song I would play in an entire night in a compressed MP3 format on one CDR. And I did it one night just to prove that, and just blew a lot of people's minds during a DJ convention show. So you can't store a bunch on it, but in today's comparative ways, it's really not the way to go. You are going to need more than that. You're going to be in the gigabyte area. And none of these are really good for gigabyte storage. The Blu-ray's kind of going away now, too. It's very expensive for the drives and the discs, so it didn't really catch on like a lot of people hoped it would. So the most popular way to back up is still your external hard disk drive. It's the same as the disk drive that's inside your computer. It's got a moving spindle and a disk, and it stores things on magnetic substrate. And you can get very, very high storage volumes for very little price because production is ramped up on these things. So maximum capacity is about 5 terabytes, way more than any average user would ever need, is 5 terabytes. Typically, they're sold in 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte configurations for a single drive. And once you get higher than that, it starts using multiple drives within the same carrier. A nice thing about the smaller units is they're USB bus powered. They use the same drives that are in laptop computers, and it only needs a very, very little bit of voltage to get them working. So all you need is one USB cable plugged into your computer, and it backs up to that laptop size hard drive. And you get them up to, I think, 3 terabytes now. Ton of information for very, very affordable prices. It's very, very cheap to do this, and it works on any PC, Mac, or even Chromebooks too. Not that you can store a lot on the Chromebook, but. And then there's the flash thumb travel drives, which have become very, very popular over the last 6 or 7 years. And the prices have come down substantially. Very, very inexpensive to store a bunch of data. Now, this may be all you need depending on how you use your computer. And you can tell that we'll go into that a little bit later. I'll show you how to do that. And to right-click on your folders, it'll tell you how much is in there. And you can really tell how much information you need to store. You may be able to back up your entire computer on one single 32 gigabyte flash drive. I don't recommend that. The reliability is a little flaky, but typically very good. Again, I note here that I've actually washed a Memorex thumb drive, one of the early 1 gigabyte models, several times. Not on purpose, by accident. And it's still working. To this day, this thing still is able to read and write information. So the maximum capacity is 1 terabyte if you have $800 in pocket change, but usually they're sold in the gigabyte area of somewhere between 8 and 64 gigabytes. Very, very affordable, well under, I think, $30 now. As you start to get up to 128 gigabytes, still a little pricey, but they'll start work their way down. This is known as solid state storage. So you see that the moving parts are beginning to go away. The CDs, the floppy drives, because that was a moving disk inside too, a very, very thin film disk inside the floppy drives. And the CDs, the DVDs, and hard drives and the floppies are all going away, and we're going more and more towards this solid state, even in the hard drive arena. Prices are still a little heavy on that, but they're working their way down. Now, the newest entry are the cloud backup services. As we described before, if you were sleeping, I'll repeat it. You're essentially storing your personal data on a company's bank of computers. Think about this big room filled with computers. And they've got tons of hard drives in there, and they store your personal information on one or more of those hard drives in some factory or some warehouse building somewhere. So this is very, very effective, again, because they use server setups, meaning that they usually do redundant backups. So when you're copying your information over the internet to one of these things, and that's how it works, it has to go online over the internet, and it copies your data to one or more of these hard drives, and it copies it from your computer to one or more of their hard drives. So essentially, they're doing duplicate backups of your data, which is really nice. So in the event that one storage center fails or a hard drive goes bad, they still have another one somewhere else in a physically separate location, and they can pull your information out of that easily. So important to know that the initial upload for one of these things takes a long time, because the typical home user's internet connection is about 1/10 the speed of your download connection. That's just the bottleneck in it. So it takes sometimes, if you have a lot of data on your computer, it can take upwards of a week of your computer being constantly on and constantly connected to the internet to do a full backup of your computer to a cloud service. There's a lot of them out there in terms of reliability, all pretty much the same. Carbonite, Mozy, Dropbox. You've got people who like all of those. We've been using Carbonite for a couple of years. $60 a year, virtually unlimited data. The only thing they don't back up, what I understand at this point, and they may have changed that, are videos at this point. It starts to get pretty heavy in terms of, but you can upgrade to a business account, which will upload your videos, and you can change your plan too. So virtually unlimited capacity in those cloud storage devices too, which is really nice, except for the videos, and you pay a little bit more for that. And if you're a business, you pay a little bit more too. Now, you may have already been doing backups and not realized it. If you upload your photos to Facebook or Flickr or any of these services here, you have actually created a backup and maybe not even known it. So if your hard drive went bad, and we've seen this happen a lot as we tried to rebuild data collections from people who have hard drives that have failed and didn't back up, we point them to their Facebook directories, and then we actually pull their data back down. You can download a dump of your data of everything you've ever uploaded to Facebook and bring it back down to your computer. So Facebook essentially, and some of these other services, back up your data for you without even knowing about it. So when you're sharing those pictures, man, you're actually backing up. You're creating a second copy in a physically separate location. And in most cases, most of these are free, so that's really nice. And now I always throw this out here and people laugh. Still, probably the most secure method of backing things up is printing it out and chucking it in a dark place somewhere. Printing out a hard copy of a will or a tax document or something, and then keeping it in a fire safe or somewhere dark. A couple of things to know about this. If you're backing up pictures by printing them out, you're better off taking them to a Target or a Walgreens or somebody who does professional picture printing, because they will use something called archival inks, typically in archival paper, which means your pictures won't fade after about a year in case they happen to hit the light. Well, a lot of inkjet printers that we've seen, you print a picture out, and you've probably seen this. The red starts to fade and the blue fades, and then you're stuck with this big yellow image on a piece of paper. And it's kind of awful, and you didn't really do a good backup, unless you kept it in a perfect dark medium with acid-free paper, which starts to get kind of pricey. So laser printers are a little bit better, a little bit more permanent, depending on the paper that you printed on, and keep it in a dark place. And of course, paper is subject to fire, so you want to keep it in a fire safe, something that's rated pretty high if it's really important. Maximum capacity, well, as much space as you can spare. Now, important to remember, and I should mention this more frequently, because I see a lot of people end up corrupting their hard drives this way, or their data, at least part of their data. There's a little icon when you plug in a flash drive or an external hard drive, or any external device for that matter. And this is important when you're using storage media, because what happens is people will plug in their external hard drive and then they'll just yank it out, but the computer hasn't finished doing what it needs to do with that external hard drive. And the way a computer works, to keep it simple, it writes things to that short-term memory we talked about earlier, and then when it has the opportunity, it then swings it out to your permanent storage media, your hard drive. But your computer may be in the middle of doing something else and it didn't have time, and it caches that data and you yanked it out, and hey, sorry buddy, you didn't get a chance to write all that to your external hard drive. So what you do, how you avoid that, is tell your computer, hey, I'm about to eject this external device. And you do that by clicking on this thing and clicking on eject and telling your computer you're going to remove it, so it hurries up and writes and finishes whatever it needs to do to that external device, and then it ejects it safely. So remember to do that, and properly removing your media ensures all the data will be written properly and not corrupted. You can actually corrupt an external hard drive by writing to it incorrectly. So important to safely remove that hardware. So let's jump into it. I've done a bunch of flapping of the gums, but now let's take a look at an actual backup and how it really works in the real world. All right, we're going to start with some basic stuff. I'm just going to copy a folder over. I'm going to show you just the basics of the mechanics of doing a backup so that you'll have a better idea of what we're looking at. This is a Windows 10 operating system we just upgraded. Still trying to figure out the kinks in this thing, running into a few walls, but for the most part it's doing pretty well. And you can see up to the top left here, we have a quick access area. So what I'm going to do is just kind of navigate to, most people find their pictures are their most valuable data on their computer. So I'm going to click on pictures, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on here, stuff I've been saving for months, and stuff that is important to me that I definitely want to back up. So what I'm going to do, for example, is, now you can take these as directories, you can take them as individual files, or you can take an entire folder or all your folders and back those up. And this is called a manual backup, when you physically copy something from one place to another. So in this particular instance, I'm going to take, also you can notice when I hover over it, it tells me how big the file is. So this COA is big, this Cocoa Beach Pier is 422 megabytes, and it gives me kind of a brief view of what's in it. I can drill down and see what's actually in there by double clicking on it, and it shows me all the pictures. Just pictures, maybe videos, might be all kinds of stuff in here. And then to go back, you just click back on your picture. So if I wanted to take just one of these pictures, a picture of this pelican for instance, and it's located on my hard drive right now, and I could just copy this by clicking on it. Now you can do it a whole bunch of different ways. The nice thing about Windows is they give you several different ways to do things. You find the way that's most comfortable for you, and they all work exactly the same way. You can either right click on it and then left click on copy. What you don't want to do is cut. Remember, we don't want to move it from one place to another. We want to make a copy on a different physical device, which I do have plugged in under my F drive. It's a Kingston flash drive, a 32 gig flash drive. If you had an external hard drive, it would show up the same exact way. Hard drives and external flash drives, any external device is going to show up as the next drive in your computer. In this case, it shows up as an F, and it doesn't matter what letter or what number, well, not what letter it is, it's always going to show up as a letter. But that's how you know where you're going to copy it to. That's my external device. And I can look at everything on here already. I just have a bunch of music files and stuff for another project I'm working on. So I'm going to go back to my pictures, and we'll take one of those out of our Clearwater file. Maybe I'll take one of these. And a picture of a bird or something. We take a lot of pictures of birds, not of seagulls. So if I wanted to back this picture up, I would just either right click on it, or you have menu up here under Home, and this looks the same in 7, 8, and Windows 10, and I would click Copy. Now, I need to tell my computer where I want to copy this picture to. You click on the image you want to copy, and then click on Copy up here. Or again, you can right click on it, and there's also keyboard shortcuts. You can use Control-C if you're a more advanced user. And now I want to tell it, where do I want to copy it to? Well, the definition of a backup is storing it to a separate physical device, something that doesn't reside on my computer, something I can remove and put somewhere else. So I'm going to back it up to my Kingston external flash drive. So I can drill down to a directory. I can create a new directory by clicking New Folder. And I will do that in this case. So I like to be organized, and I'll call this up backup, and I can give it today's date or a date, and I'll say August. And then I've created a new folder. Just press enter, and now that will create a folder. And then I can drill down or enter that folder. Think of folders like a file cabinet. Each one of those folders, you can put a whole bunch of things into that, and the whole big hard drive is your main file cabinet. So in this particular unit, this Kingston flash drive, I've created a folder called Backup, and then I'm going to click on Paste. And it's going to take what I told the computer to copy and paste it into this particular folder or onto this device, or onto this device within the folder. So now if I double click on it again, I can see the picture that I did copy from that folder. And I can go back. If I want to take the entire directory, I can do that. And let's go back to my pictures. Let's say I want to take, I don't want to take something that's too big. And the other important thing is you will look at it as you hover over it, or you can right click on it too, and it will tell you how big that folder is. And this way you can get an estimate of how much storage space you will need on your backup device. Like this Canon T4i in 2013, it's telling me it has 2.35 gigabytes. So I'm going to need something that's obviously bigger than that if I want to back this particular folder up. Now, if I go back up one level and I want to look at my entire pictures folder, well, actually, it shows me I only have 1.75 gigabytes free on this particular Kingston flash drive. So that's how much space I have to work with here. Now, I can look at my pictures folder and right-click on it, and then left-click on Properties, and it will tell me, it'll start to count how much data I have in this particular folder. And this way I'll have an idea of how much space I will need in my external device. Now obviously I'm at almost 72 gigabytes in my pictures folder. Mine's not an ordinary type thing. I've been taking pictures for years and I back them up a lot. So this won't fit on a typical 32 gig flash drive obviously, so I'm going to need an external hard drive if I wanted to back up the entire pictures folder. Now you can also combine all these. Say I wanted to back up my desktop, and I'm going to hold the control button down and click on one of these, my desktop, my documents, my downloads, my music, my pictures, and my videos. My most used folders in my personal directory I'm logged in is me. So remember again, if there are multiple users, each one of the users will have these subset of folders. Let's drill down to the actual folders. It may not be able to do that in this particular circumstance. Apparently I've never tried that before. So I go to Chuck, and I'm going to select the same folders where they actually live. Now you can see I've drilled down to C users Chuck, and you can see my subset of folders here. So I'm going to hold the control button down. I'm going to select control, click desktop, documents, downloads. I'm going to skip Dropbox. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And videos. And now I can right click on all these as they're selected, and it will give me, here it comes. Now it comes up with a total as it starts to add up the total amount of storage that all these folders contain. And now I can figure out, well, this is how big of a hard drive I need to back all this information up. So it's finished up, and it's telling me that I have about 168 gigabytes of data on my hard drive that I want to back up. I'm going to need something that's obviously bigger than 168 gigabytes. So a 500 gigabyte hard drive would suffice in this particular circumstance. So I'll take my marketing company folder, which is 26.3, mostly documents. And I want to back that up because that stuff's pretty important to me. And I'm going to go back to my Kingston or my external device, and then I'm just going to paste that whole folder right here, clicking paste. And now it's copying everything in that particular folder over to this external device. And now I've backed it up because I can remove this device. And it's going to ask me, do you want to copy this without its properties? And there's just some extraneous information. Always say yes and make sure just that you have it all copied there. So now I have this Brevard marketing folder here that is backed up into my external flash drive. Now to remove it, as we talked about before, down here in the tray in the bottom right corner, you're going to see this little guide that says safely remove and eject media. So I'm going to click on that once. It'll show me everything that's attached. If you have multiple hard drives, you'd see a list of them here. This time it's only my Data Traveler 2.0. I click on Eject Data Traveler 2.0. and then it lets me know that it is safe to remove. And this way, it stored any information that the hard drive or the memory may have cached and submitted it over to my external device, and now it's safely secured and backed up and ready to remove, and then I could just yank it out and it's ready to go. So that's it. That's the simple, dirty manual backup. The next thing we're going to look at is backing up through Windows Backup Mechanism, which is a software built into just about every Windows computer, and we'll look at that now. Way back since the days of Windows 7, the Windows operating system has included a backup mechanism, a piece of software built into the operating system that will allow you to back up your information. In Windows 10, they've modified it slightly. It's called File History, but also you can access the old Windows 7 things too. So you get there by going to Settings, to using your Start button, and then click on Settings. In the last section here, you'll see Update and Security. And why it's there, I don't know. Somebody thought it should be there, so that's where it is. You'll see it's in the same category as Windows Update Defender, so click on Backup, and you will see the backup options, including the old Windows 7 backup mechanism. Again, it's still included in Windows 10, I'm sorry. So what you need to do, first of all, is add a drive. You need an external hard drive. It won't let you back up to your own hard drive, which is a good thing because we've learned before, technically, that's not a backup. So I've plugged in an external hard drive, and I need to add that drive to my file history. And we'll do the file history first, which backs up your information rather than the image. So I'm going to add a drive, and it'll show on the left-hand side all the hard drives that I have physically attached to my computer and how much space is left on them. So I'm going to click on that one, and that's my Seagate backup drive. And it will switch the automatically back up my files to on, and we click under more options, and you'll see the default settings here. And by default, it's scheduled to back up my files every hour. Now, that's probably a little overkill for most people, unless you're constantly writing, rewriting, overwriting files and changing things, or if you run a business and you're very dynamic and you've got a lot of things going on. In that case, you might want to back up every hour. But for most people, you're probably okay daily or every week or whatever. Once a day, even for businesses, is more than adequate in most cases. Again, unless you're very, very dynamic, depending on your business needs. But for the average user, daily, weekly, I wouldn't go longer than a week because you can store up a lot of information in a week, especially if you're busy doing something, organizing photographs or whatnot. And you can always change this to backup hourly if you're working on something important. And to keep your backups, I usually click on the default option of keep them forever, and you can delete them manually. You can always delete your folders and files manually if you decide you no longer need them. So, and by default, it's going to show you all this stuff that's backed up automatically. It's going under, it's not backing up my entire computer. This is user directory independent, meaning if I'm logged on as Chuck, it's just going to back up my files. Now, I can tell it to back up other users' files, too. If I add a folder, I can drill down and find my other users' folders, too, and do that. Or you can leave them log in and set their own backup themselves to their own hard drive. But in this case, I'm just going to leave this alone. I'm not going to add anything here. You can take some things out. If you don't want it to back up your OneDrive, just click on it and then click remove, and that goes away. And you can always add it back in if you decided you made a mistake. But backs up the most common folders, I guess your most used folders that you see on your computer. A lot of these I don't remember even clicking on, and it's throwing them in there. I don't want to back up my Dropbox because that's already backed up. And we'll talk about Dropbox in another video. Very, very helpful. And it's backing up a lot of my Dropbox stuff, which is a backup of a backup to begin with. So you can tweak these folders, tell it what you want to back up. And again, the most important thing are going to be your music, your videos, your pictures, documents, desktop, downloads, and anything else you can think of. And that's it. You just click on Backup Now, and it'll tell you how much space you're going to need if you have enough space on that hard drive, and it starts backing up your information to that external hard drive. So this is the most common way of automating your backup. Of course, your computer needs to be powered on, and your external hard drive needs to be connected and also powered up. If mine, in this case, is USB powered, so I don't have to worry about plugging in a power cord. So it'll start backing up your information, and it will give you a little message on the screen when it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this for now, but that's how you'd go through that particular backup option. So if I go back, I could do the older backup, which has a little bit more fully featured backup. You can back up your entire hard disk. So you open this guy here looking for an older backup. You're going to go to Backup and Restore, which is going to open the old familiar Windows 7 menu, which for most cases does still exist right here in Windows 10 and also Windows 8. They've pleasantly kept all that background information, all those old applications and look and feel of everything since Windows Vista, actually. So it's much more familiar to people than the new interface. And I imagine eventually they'll phase those out, but as far as Windows 10, it's still here to stay. So when that decides to open, I will figure that out. And some reason it's not opening. Might be another kind of crazy bug here in Windows 10. Let's try to pull it up again under Backup. And I'm going to go to Backup and Restore under Windows 7. And here it comes in the background here. So it's the old Windows 7 backup mechanism here. So you can set up this backup here. And Windows backup, again, is going to give you a couple different options. You can just choose to back up files and folders, or you can do a complete system image backup. And remember, the downside of an image backup, it's good because it keeps all your programs and your data intact. And you could actually burn a CD through this backup mechanism that will restore your computer to the day you did your backup. The problem with that is the system backup, the image, is going to take a long time, a lot of disk space, and it's only good through the day you backed it up. So all your data is going to be there, but it's only there through the day you did that cumbersome backup. So you may not have everything you're looking for. So you have to tell it where you want to back things up. Now, this is my recovery drive. Remember, this is actually part of my C drive. It's a partition, so you never want to do that. Anything that says recovery, it's usually part of your hard drive, so you don't want to back it up to there. You want to back up to an external device, which in this case is my Seagate. Shows up my F drive. And, well, what did it say there? Let's take a look at that again. We're going to set up backup. I'm moving a little fast. I don't typically back up this way. So does not have enough space. Oh, good. So it tells me it doesn't have enough space to store a system image. And my system image is going to be about 500 gigabytes, and this hard drive is 500 gigabytes, and I've used about 400 for my manual backup so far. So assuming it did have enough for a system image, you would click Next, and you can let Windows choose. And if Windows chooses this, it will create a system image, and then it will back up your data, which will give you a more incremental backup. And you just click Next, or you can click Let Me Choose, and you can tell it what to do. If you want to hand pick what you want to back up, certain files, folders, or you could do the whole image here. And you can include a system image and uncheck that if you don't want to. It's going to back up. And the nice thing about this particular backup is it will back up all the users. It's actually found all the individual users on my computer, including the administrator account, and it's backing up all the libraries in those too. So that's nice. So if you had a wife, kids, family members, other friends who use your computer, it will back all that information up too, automatically. So then you click Next, and then you can change your schedule and tell it when to back up. Again, your computer needs to be powered on, your external drive needs to be plugged in, and all these things need to happen in order for your backup to become successful. And a lot of people forget, and they turn their computer off. And you know, if you're set for Sunday at 7 p.m. and your computer is powered off and your external hard drive's not connected, obviously you're not going to back up successfully. So there's a little bit of responsibility on your part if you're going to use this particular mechanism to back up your computer. You click OK and then Save Settings, and now it'll create a system task and run that backup whenever you have designated it to happen. So if you back up this way and you do your manual backup of your files every couple of days, every week, every 2 weeks, you'll have the best of both worlds. You'll have a system image in the event that your computer hard drive dies. You don't have to reinstall all your data because you have that system backup when all the programs were installed. And then you could just take your incremental data backups and just merge those back in, and you're right back where you started. A nice, easy system recovery in the event of a hard drive failure or something else catastrophic that goes on. A couple of things. If your computer dies, your motherboard fails or something, you can't use an image unless you buy the same exact computer. And considering the fact that technology changes so quickly, unless you've bought two at the same time, it's extremely unlikely that you'll be able to find the exact identical model that an image will work on. So the image may not be your best option, but definitely back up your data, and it's a good idea to have an image done if software is unavailable to you. If you just can't find that software to reinstall it, or you misplaced disks, or you don't have license numbers, or you borrowed it from somebody, which is not exactly legal, but that's your business. I don't want to know anything. So that's the Windows system backups. So we've looked at the manual backups. We've looked at the Windows built-in system backups, including imaging. And in another video coming up soon, we'll talk about Dropbox. We'll look at Carbonite and some of the more advanced backup procedures and options for you. So my name is Chuck Fresh. Please make sure you like and subscribe to our videos. Comment below if we've missed anything, or if you have any of your own experiences that may help somebody else. And please leave that in the comments below. Chuck Fresh, the PCGYN. This is Computer Care Clinic's Tip of the Day.